The twin suns of Zorathi Prime bled orange and gold across the horizon, casting long, flickering shadows over a land once alive with song. Now the great crystalline towers stood hollow and abandoned, their spires cracked, their echoes lost to time. The air shimmered with a faint pulse of heat, and beneath it all stretched the dying breath of a world too proud to admit it was failing. The transport vessel descended slowly, its engines humming through the silence like a forgotten prayer. Inside, Dr. Reid Halser adjusted the collar of his coat and squinted out the viewing pane. The plains below looked like polished bone, all glass and dust and ruins that reached too high and fell too hard. He exhaled, muttering to himself, "Welcome to paradise, Halser. Population, hopeless." The ramp hissed open, and the air hit him like heat trapped in velvet, soft but heavy. Reid stepped off and glanced around. He was 5'5" on a 5. Good day, 5'6" if he didn't slouch. Surrounded by looming structures and Velari guards whose heads brushed the ceiling, he felt like a toy soldier in a land built for giants. A voice greeted him, clipped and formal. "Dr. Halser, you will follow." Reid turned to see a tall Velari male in ceremonial robes, expression unreadable, eyes pale silver. No name, no welcome. Just motion. He followed without protest. The interior of the Nexus facility was a blend of high-tech sterilization and ancient reverence. Carvings of old Velari myths lined the walls, tales of unity, growth, and divine selection. But now, unity was broken, growth was stalled, and divinity had gone quiet. In the council chamber, the high Nexus sat perched in a semicircle of glass and gold, their elongated forms casting towering silhouettes. Each member wore the royal mark of Biocast lineage, though their faces betrayed no emotion. "You were brought to Zorathi for one reason," the central voice said. "To correct what our bloodlines have failed to sustain. You are not here to build relationships. You are here to produce compatibility." Reid raised an eyebrow. "Nice to meet you too." Silence. Then, from behind a lattice of glowing columns, she stepped forward. Lonnie. She was a shadow stretched by time and light. 9 feet tall, her frame built of elegance and strength in impossible proportions. Skin like polished obsidian dusted with violet shimmer. Her eyes, ancient and amber, scanned him with unsettling stillness. There was no arrogance in her gaze, only a deep questioning stillness that tugged at something inside him. "This is the Highborn," one of the Nexus said. "The last of her line. She has been difficult." Reid blinked. "Difficult? She has failed every compatibility measure. No Velari male can withstand full merging. Her form is considered extreme, dangerous, unfit." Plani said nothing. Her eyes remained on him, unblinking. "And you want me to run a few tests and play God?" Reid asked, voice dry. "We want results," the Nexus replied, "not sentiment." "Right," he muttered. "Science without soul. That always works out well." The meeting ended with instructions, warnings, veiled threats. But as Reid turned to leave, he paused, feeling her gaze still fixed on him. "You always this quiet?" he asked her. Plani tilted her head slightly, voice low, even. "You are smaller than expected," Reid smiled. "You're not." For a flicker of a second, her expression shifted, something between surprise and amusement, but it vanished just as quickly. As he followed the escort to the research wing, Reid glanced back one more time. She was still standing there, framed in alien light, watching him too closely, and deep in his chest he felt it begin, the question, the pull, the whisper that this wasn't just about science. This was about something else entirely. The lab was colder than he expected. Not in temperature, but in spirit. Dr. Reid Halser stood alone in the sterile chamber, arms crossed, eyes narrowing as he studied the equipment. Sleek consoles hummed faintly around him, glowing with alien Scripts he'd only just begun to understand. Genetic sequencing arrays lined the far wall, their iridescent surfaces pulsing with Vilari tech that made Earth's finest look like clunky toys. He should have been impressed. He wasn't, not yet. He paced once, twice, then stopped at the central console where a tall cylinder glowed with a floating strand of recombinant DNA, the one that had failed. Again and again. It flickered in red, incomplete. He muttered, "If this is what passes for impossible to fix, then they really haven't met stubborn humans." The door slid open without a sound. Tlani stepped in. Reid turned out. Her presence immediately reshaped the room. No matter how often he saw her, the impact didn't soften. She wasn't just tall, she was monument. She moved with a kind of restrained power that suggested ancient bloodlines and burdens too heavy to name. Her long silver-black hair was braided tight along the crown, and a pale light glowed beneath her skin like energy lived just under the surface. "I was told you requested a private session," she said. "Requested?" Reid said, mock offense in his voice. "They made it sound like I demanded it. Did you? Maybe." Tlani stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "Why?" Reid didn't answer right away. He walked to the projection at the center of the room and tapped a command. The floating DNA model spun slowly between them. "This is your genome," he said, pointing at the strand. "And this," he tapped another command, "is what happens when it tries to bond with a standard Vilari male." The model flickered, fragmented, collapsed. "Your mitochondrial energy signature is too strong," he explained. "Vilari males can't stabilize the bond. Their systems see you as a threat. And what of humans?" She asked. "That's what I want to find out." A beat of silence passed. Then she asked, quieter this time, "You think you can succeed where Vilari science has failed?" Reid turned to her. "I don't know. But I'm not ready to write you off because your biology doesn't conform to their fears." Something flickered in her golden eyes. She blinked once, twice. "You speak differently." "I'm short," Reid said, smirking. "I had to develop personality." That earned a reaction. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "But no longer ice." Then her gaze darkened. "You should know. I was tested repeatedly, as a child, as an adolescent. When I reached my final growth stage, I was examined without consent. The council called it duty. I called it violation." Reid's voice softened. "They treated you like a failed blueprint." She nodded once slowly. "And when I refused to continue, they told me I would die alone. My name would vanish from the bloodline records." Reid stepped forward, gently placing a data slate in her hand. "Then maybe it's time we write a different record." She looked down at the slate, then up at him. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "You are not like the others. You noticed that already, huh?" "No," she said. "I felt it." Her gaze lingered on him longer than before, less like scrutiny, more like ... searching ... behind them. The sequence restarted. Reid activated the human compatibility model, his DNA, her DNA impossible pairing. The projection stuttered, then held. A moment passed, still holding. Reid's breath caught. Tlani stared at the floating helix. It pulsed with violet light. "That's not a full bond," he said quickly, heart racing. "But it's more than we've seen before." Tlani didn't respond. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the console. Her fingers hovered just above his. Her voice was calm, almost mechanical. "I will continue on one condition." Reid glanced at her hand, then met her gaze. "Name it." "I decide when the trials stop," Reid nodded. "Agreed." A subtle vibration ran through the room, either from the console or something unspoken between them. He couldn't tell. She turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. "The council may want results, Dr. Halser, but I am watching for something else." What? She didn't answer. She just looked back at him, eyes deep with something between warning and hope. Then she was gone. Reid stood alone in the dim light, staring at the projection still spinning, his DNA entwined with hers. Fragile, glowing, improbable, and holding. The sky over Zorathi Prime was the color of molten steel, layered in storm cloud haze. It pressed low over the Nexus compound like a warning unspoken. Lightning forked across the horizon but made no sound, as if even the storms here respected the silence that blanketed this dying world. Inside the observation chamber, Reid Halser's heart thudded faster than the diagnostic console's quiet beep. The latest trial results glowed across the translucent screen, lines of genetic code cascading in symmetrical motion. Human Valari cross-sequence, still holding. No collapse, no rejection. No cellular rejection markers. It wasn't perfect. But it wasn't failure either. Behind him, the chamber door whispered open. He didn't need to turn. He could feel her. Tlani's presence always arrived before her footsteps. She moved like gravity itself, a quiet force you noticed too late. Too deep to escape. She stood by the window, hands behind her back, watching the crackling storm roll across the distant plains. "You ran it again," she said, her voice low. "I had to," Reid replied without turning. "There's something happening in your mitochondrial resonance, something I've never seen before. It's reacting to my DNA in a way Valari sequences can't." Tlani was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You should not become invested." Reid turned slowly, leaning his hip against the console. "In the science? In me?" He met her eyes without flinching. Too late. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was charged. "I've reviewed the neural merge diagrams you left on my slate," she said, changing the subject, but not really. "They show intense signatures mirror response patterns." "That's not just biology." "No," Reid said. "That's something else. Something older than science." Tlani stepped toward the table where the empathic simulation headset lay. "Idle. You believe in the old bonding rituals. I believe they were discarded too quickly by people too afraid of what they couldn't measure," he said. Tlani studied the headset for a long moment. "My mother used to say the old Valari could see into one another's souls, not with eyes, not even with thought, but through resonance. And what do you believe?" Tlani's voice was almost a whisper. "I believe I don't know what a soul looks like, but I know what it feels like when mine has no mirror." Reid's throat tightened. He reached for the headset and held it out. "Let's find out what kind of mirror I can be." She took it from his hands, her fingers brushing his with a heat that was almost electric. They entered the resonance chamber in silence. Reid settled into one chair, Tlani into the other. Their headsets synchronized with a rising tone, and the room dimmed. Then came the pulse. Not light, not sound, but something else. A current between them, like memory soaked in light. Reid gasped softly as images flickered behind his eyes. But they weren't his. Tlani as a child, towering above her peers. A teacher's face twisting in discomfort as she was measured. Her mother's quiet hand smoothing a braid into place, whispering, "You are not too much. They are too little." The moment she was told she would never qualify to bond, the ritual gown, folded and untouched for years, the look of disgust on a potential suitor's face when she stepped into the ceremonial hall, then him, his first awkward smile, his warmth in the sterile lab, his refusal to flinch when she towered above him, her heart, uncertain, waking. Reid blinked. "You're showing me everything." "You were open," she whispered. "So I let the gates fall." His memories followed. Earth, concrete, small hands in big classrooms, laughter not meant kindly, running faster than bullies, outthinking those he couldn't outrun. Watching his mother die slowly in a hospital where he was too short to reach the bed rails. His first genetic breakthrough. His rejection from the board. His stubborn decision to come to Zorathi. The ache that never left his chest. Tlani whispered, "You carry your wounds like stars." Reid leaned forward. Their hands found each other in the dim light, fingers locking not perfectly, but like vines around stone. The chamber lights flickered on the monitor. Their DNA strands moved again, but not side by side. Entwined and holding. An alert chimed. The first sign of viable neural empathic bond formation. Tlani leaned back slowly, removing the headset, her breathing steady but deep. "That was not protocol," she said. "No," Reid said. "That was human." She stood, towering above him, and for the first time didn't seem remote. She seemed reachable. "I felt your grief," she said. "I have never felt grief that small and that loud." Reid stood as well, not shrinking from her. "I felt your strength. You think it's your height that makes others fear you, but it's not. It's the size of your spirit." They stared at one another for a long moment. Then she asked, "What now?" Reid smiled. "Now we take the next step." She nodded once. "I want to, but not because of the council." Reid stepped closer. "Because of us?" She didn't answer, but her fingers brushed his as she passed him on the way out, and that was enough. The console blinked. Quietly, merged neural pathways. Stable. Resonance. Elevated. Prediction model. Evolving. Somewhere in the data, something impossible was happening. And neither of them could walk away now. The garden was not marked on any official map of the Nexus grounds. It was hidden beyond the south wing, past an abandoned genetics wing and through a corridor overgrown with silver-leaf vines that glowed faintly when brushed. No guards stood watch. No technicians wandered near. If Zorathi Prime had any heart left unspoiled, it beat here, beneath a canopy of crystalline trees that shimmered even in darkness. Reid pushed open the creaking outer panel, stepping into the garden with a quiet breath. The scent of it struck him first cool, earthy, unfamiliar, like wet stone soaked in starlight. Bioluminescent blossoms pulsed a soft blue between winding roots. Every petal looked carved from moonlight. Somewhere in the trees, unseen creatures chirped in delicate rhythm. Tlani stood at the center, barefoot on the smooth obsidian stones, her hands clasped behind her back. The night wind stirred her silver braid as she turned slowly toward him. "You?" "Found it," she said. "I followed the part of the building that looked most forgotten. You chose well." He stepped closer, careful not to disturb the blooms. "Why here?" She looked to the tree canopy. "Because no one else comes. And nothing here asks me to be smaller." Reid smiled gently. "Then it's my favorite place now, too." She tilted her head. "You say things that should sound foolish, but they don't. It's a gift." They stood in silence, letting the moment settle between them. Then she gestured for him to sit on a large, flat root that arched like a bench over the glowing stream. He did. She sat beside him, knees bent, her height making her silhouette sharp against the garden's quiet light. Reid reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small vial of amber serum. "What is it?" she asked, watching him closely. "A human enzyme, one we developed for patients with autoimmune disorders. It stabilizes extreme bioreactivity. You want me to take it?" "No, I took it 2 hours ago." She blinked. "You modified yourself." He nodded. "I wanted to see what it would do to the neural resonance signature before we tried anything further." "And?" "I didn't collapse," he said. "That's a start." She didn't speak for a moment, but her expression darkened. "You risked yourself without consulting me. It was my choice." "No," she said, voice tightening. "This isn't a lab trial anymore. This is us," Reid swallowed. "I know. That's why I did it." She stood suddenly, the wind catching her cloak as she paced near the edge of the stream. "They will not allow this. The council sees me as a relic and you as an expendable. Variable. If we succeed, they will claim it. If we fail, they will bury us." Reid stood too. "Then let's not fail," she turned. "You still don't understand. This isn't just science. If the resonance reaches its peak, if we proceed, I will be changed permanently. My biology will adapt to yours. My bond will fix. It cannot be undone. Then don't take the step unless you want it." She stepped toward him. "I don't fear the bond." Reid's breath caught. "What do you fear?" "I fear being alone after," she whispered. "I fear waking to find I was only a means to a result." Reid crossed the space between them, slowly, every step deliberate. He looked up into her glowing eyes and said, "Then let me give you the result first, and we'll find the meaning after." Her brow furrowed. "That's backwards." "No," he said. "It's human." She let out a breath that trembled in her chest, then reached forward and pressed her palm to his chest, just over his heart. Her hand covered half his torso. "Your rhythm is erratic." "Yeah," he said. "That tends to happen when the woman I'm falling for starts quoting fatalistic destiny stuff." She blinked, surprised. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more," he said. For the first time, she laughed. It was soft, real, and when she looked at him, it wasn't like she was measuring him. It was like she was seeing him. The wind shifted, somewhere in the garden. The starlight blossoms bloomed in full, and Tlani stepped closer. She leaned down, so her face was near his, her expression unreadable. "I will attempt the final merge," she said, "but not for the council." Reid nodded, breath shallow. "Then why?" She paused, "for the chance that someone could know all of me and still stay." They returned to the resonance chamber just before midnight. No council members were informed. No monitors observed. Reid adjusted the calibration himself. Tlani settled onto the platform. The chamber lights dimmed. Their neural helmets sensed. With a pulse that felt like the hum of stars in a vacuum. The merge began. It was not data. It was surrender. Tlani's breathing slowed. Reid felt his own heartbeat sinking to hers. The neural interface flickered, then steadied. The strands of their consciousness, emotion, memory, instinct folded inward. He saw the girl she once was, alone in a hall of mirrors, terrified of her size, begging the genetic elders to explain why she had to be born this way. She saw him in a hospital hallway, a child holding his father's hand, a doctor shaking their head. The silence that followed. She reached out. He did too. And then a convergence, not code, not permission. But choice. The interface pinged once, then again, full neural bonding achieved. Tlani opened her eyes. Reid did too. They stared at one another across the silence, tears unspoken in both pairs of eyes. "I felt everything," she whispered. "Me too," he said, and she reached out, not in protocol, not in science, but in faith. Her fingers touched his face. And for the first time, she said his name without distance. Reid. Everything had changed. Lightning clawed across the night sky, a jagged silver crack splitting the dome above the Nexus compound. Thunder didn't follow. It never did on Zorathi Prime. The storms here burned silently, like the anger of a people taught never to scream. Inside the high chamber of deliberation, 12 members of the Velari High Nexus sat in a semicircle of stone and light, their long faces etched in stoic lines. Robes of woven starless draped over their shoulders, the ceremonial fabric dimly pulsing with the bioluminescent filaments that marked them as the planet's oldest authority, and at the center of the floor alone, dwarfed by grandeur, stood Tlani. Her head was held high, her hands clasped behind her back. her eyes calm, but her pulse roared like fire in her chest. Reid stood in the gallery above, flanked by 2 guards and 1 expressionless aide who had stopped calling him Doctor the moment word of the unsanctioned merge spread. He leaned forward, palms pressed against the transparent railing, watching her with a sick weight in his gut. The trial had worked. The bond had formed, which meant the council was now afraid. High Nexus Sar leaned forward, his white eyes gleaming. You performed an unapproved merge. Plani didn't blink. I did. You circumvented oversight, defied protocol, and jeopardized a program critical to the survival of our species. I followed the one protocol that matters, she said evenly. Consent. A ripple of movement through the council. Not quite outrage. Not yet. Sar narrowed his eyes. You are bonded to a human now. Do you deny it? No, she said. I claim it. The silence turned cold. From the shadows beside the council, a new figure stepped forward. Tall, lean, eyes like smoke and winter. Reid's stomach dropped. Envoy Mara. He'd read the files. She wasn't a scientist. She was policy. Enforcement. The closer she got to something, the less of it survived. You've initiated an unstable genetic merge, Mara said, her voice razor flat. Our projections warned against human interfacing. The risks are incalculable. The projections were wrong, Plani said. No, Mara said, stepping forward. Your bond is an anomaly, one that may endanger both species. The Nexus cannot tolerate variables. We must now isolate the effects and, if necessary, neutralize them. Reid slammed his palm against the railing. You mean terminate them? Guards moved to silence him, but Sar raised a hand. Let him speak. Reid didn't hesitate. He pushed forward, past the guards, his voice hard and clear. You asked for a solution. You begged for one. And now that it's here, you want to kill it because it didn't come in a box you control. Mara turned toward him slowly. You are an outsider. You have no authority here. No, Reid said. But I have the data. You don't get to pretend that what happened wasn't real. Her cells didn't reject mine. Her mind didn't fracture. The merge stabilized in under 4 minutes. And there's one thing no simulation ever predicted. He looked at T-Lani.she. Looked back silent, certain. It wasn't just a merge, Reid said softly. It was a choice. Sar rose to his feet. Enough. We will deliberate. Plani spoke one last time, her voice a final chime of steel in the room. You can debate all you want, but I'm done asking for permission to exist. Then she turned and walked away. Reid followed. The chamber erupted behind them, but it didn't matter. They had already crossed a line no authority could erase. Outside the council dome, the rain began to fall, a rare phenomenon. Not acid, not vapor, but water. Real rain. By the time they reached the lab complex, the walkways were slick with it, and the entire facility smelled of ozone and soil. In the private chamber, under the low blow of a sleeping console, Reid poured 2 cups of heated extract and handed one to T-Lani. She took it without a word and sat beside him. Do you think they'll let this go? He asked. No, she said, but they've already lost. How? She looked over at him, and something glowed in her eyes that no datasheet could chart. Because I'm not afraid anymore. They sat together in the quiet hum of the lab. The bond between them was no longer theoretical. It was lived. It was chosen. And it was about to be tested more violently than either of them could imagine. But neither moved, because the future had already begun. And it had both their names written in it. The sun never truly rose on Zorathi Prime. It climbed the horizon, yes, but through the planet's dense crystalline atmosphere, it broke into fractured light, casting no warmth, only shards. The light slanted sideways through the compounds. East Wing, as Reid Halser stood at the observation deck, one hand pressed flat against the thick window. Watching the garden far below, Talani had gone silent again. Not cold, never cold with him anymore, but withdrawn. Distant in a way he recognized now not as rejection, but as bracing. Preparing for something she didn't want to feel. The council's threat still hung over them, unspoken but unrelenting, and Envoy Marat's quiet surveillance turned every corridor into a test of resolve. A soft chime echoed behind him. The lab door opened. Talani entered, cloaked in ceremonial robes that shimmered like flowing dusk, their high collar framing her tall posture like armor made of shadow and dignity. But her expression, her eyes held something else, not defiance. Not calculation. Uncertainty. Double quotes, you called me, she said. Reid turned, a datapad in hand. I finished the internal sequencing scan from the merge. There's something. She stepped forward. What did you find? He handed her the pad. The readings pulsed faintly: neural pathways, mitochondrial resonance, hormone levels, and one data stream that didn't make sense. At first I thought it was a calibration error, he said. But I triple-checked. It's from you. She stared at the chart. My neural frequency has shifted. Not just yours, mine too. Our bond wasn't just stable. It's growing, reinforcing itself. Like a feedback loop between us. What does that mean? She asked, voice soft but tight. Reid looked up. It means we're no longer separate systems. Our bodies are learning from each other. Adapting? In real time. Talani lowered the pad. Then the merge is no longer experimental. No, he said. It's permanent. They stood in silence. Outside, the sky flickered with stormlight. Do you regret it? She asked finally. Reid's laugh was soft, hollowed by tension. No, but I'm pretty sure the council does. Talani crossed the room and deactivated the overhead lights, plunging them into the glow of the data panels. They'll act soon. Reid nodded. I know. And if they order the merge dissolved? There's no way to reverse it now, he said. They'll try to isolate us, dissect us, rewrite the narrative. Talani stepped close, her frame towering above him, but not looming, shielding. They won't separate us, she said. Before Reid could answer, an alarm shrieked through the lab. Unauthorized entry. Southwind. Reid spun to the console. Security feeds flickered on black armored figures moved with precision through the lower halls. Not guards. Not Nexus. Mara's operatives. Talani's voice dropped to a whisper. They're here to remove us. And we don't let them. Reid grabbed the portable core drive from the terminal and stuffed it into his jacket. I've downloaded the merge data. We have to go. But Talani didn't move. Her gaze was fixed on the console. Wait, what? She touched the holographic controls and pulled up a hidden stream. Another signal. Faint, internal. Someone's helping us, she said. On screen, a secondary. Rote blinked green through the catacombs beneath the genetics wing. Who? Reid asked. Talani shook her head. I don't know. But we don't have time to ask. The lab door hissed open. Not from the hallway, but the far side. Leah. Talani's sister. She stepped in, eyes wide with urgency. Come with me. Now? Reid blinked. You're the one rerouting. No time, she snapped. They've activated purge protocol. Talani's breath caught. They're going to erase us. Not just you, Leah said. The entire merge program. The council doesn't want a precedent. They want control. They moved fast, ducking through corridors Reid had never seen, passages not on any map. They passed old labs sealed with dust, stasis chambers filled with failed hybrid samples, and a long corridor of memory vaults, each labeled with the name of a discarded genetic line. This place is a graveyard, Reid whispered. Talani stopped. Beside one vault, her fingers grazing the carved glyph of her own family crest. It always has been. Voices echoed behind them. Boots barked commands. Go! Leah urged, keying open a hidden service hatch. They dropped into a vertical tunnel, climbing down on embedded handrails. As they descended, Reid saw it, the facility below the facility. A chamber glowing with dormant technology. Organic consoles? Circular pools of memory thread, shimmering with locked potential. This is ancient, he breathed. Tlani stepped forward. This is where the first Velari bonds were made. Before caste, before codes. They called it the Deep Chamber. It's still active, Leah said, checking the interface. Barely. Reid held up the core drive. Can it accept new data? Tlani didn't wait. She inserted the drive. The lights in the chamber pulsed once, then turned violet. The room recognized them. Lonnie's voice was steady now. If they erase us up there, let this be the memory that remains. Let it outlive the lies. Suddenly, the floor trembled. Mara's voice echoed through the chamber via loudspeaker. You are in violation of Nexus protocol. Surrender immediately. Reid looked at T-single quotes Lonnie. She looked at him. Then she stepped into the center platform. Then come. Down here, she said, lifting her head, and see what survival looks like when it stops asking for your permission. Above, a cascade of power failure alerts lit up. Below, the deep chamber began recording. Not data, not orders, a living imprint, 2 species. One bond. Undeniable. Permanent. The war hadn't started yet, but the first shot had just been fired. The Council's voice no longer echoed across Zorathi Prime. It screamed. Above ground, the Nexus compound went dark. Power grids flickered and failed as the deep chamber drew energy from the surrounding systems. Ancient Velari tech long buried. Long forbidden, swoke from hibernation with a hunger that could not be halted by decrees or fear. Within the buried sanctum, violet light bathed the circular stone as Tlani stood unmoving in its center. Her cloak whispered around her ankles as data spirals lifted like silk around her body. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She allowed herself to be seen fully, fiercely, without the apology she had worn like a second skin her whole life. Reid stood beside Leah at the main interface. The drive was embedded in the heart of the console, its contents genetic sequences, neural resonance logs, emotional imprints streaming into the Velari. Memory threads at impossible speed. It's working, Leah said. The deep chamber is binding to the merge. It's not just storing it, it's amplifying it. Reid's eyes stayed on Tlani. Then we're not just making a record, we're making a beacon. The data threads pulsed, forming patterns in the airwaves. Of code? Yes, but also images. A child's memory, a mother's touch, a failed genetic report. Reid's laugh. The moment Tlani realized she was not broken. The moment Reid stopped trying to save her and simply stood beside her. All of it fed into the archive. Outside, stormlight ripped the sky apart. Mara and her enforcers reached the edge of the lower compound, scanners searching, protocols overridden. But the tunnels to the deep chamber had sealed behind Leah's passcode. The AI that ran the ancient vaults no longer responded to Nexus. Command. It answered to the genetic key embedded in the merge. To them. But the Council had a final card. From the highest tower, SAR activated Protocol 13, a last resort purge order tied to the compound's very foundation. If the bond could not be erased, it would be buried. With everyone inside. Tlani turned her face upward as the violet light shifted. It warmed, the way sunlight might, if Zorathi's sky had ever allowed real sun. She stepped back from the center and nodded once. It's done, she said. The deep chamber holds our imprint. Reid looked at her, something unspoken sitting between them. We need to go, Leah urged. Now. But the chamber trembled again, not a warning, a countdown. SARS purge had begun. We won't outrun it, Reid said, his voice low. Plani walked to him. She dropped to one knee, her height folding toward his, not out of deference, but connection. There may be one way. Reid's breath caught. No. I'm bonded to the chamber, she said. It recognizes me. It listens. You're not staying here too. I don't need to die, she said gently. I need to merge deeper. The realization struck him like a pulse. You mean become part of the chamber? She nodded. Anchor the memory, not as data. As presence. No, he said, voice shaking. I didn't come here to watch you disappear into another system. You didn't, she said, cupping his face in one massive, warm hand. You came here to prove I was more than what they feared. And you did. He felt the truth in it, the weight of everything they'd been through, the silence she'd endured, the defiance they'd shared, the bond they'd forged, and he knew this wasn't goodbye. This was transcendence. Take him, she told Leah. No, Reid said. You're not doing this alone. You're not staying, she said softly. Because someone needs to carry the story. Someone they'll listen to. Reid trembled. I'll come back for you. You already have, she whispered. She leaned forward. Their foreheads touching. Her breath was warm. Her voice steadier than his heart. Tell them what we built. Then the chamber opened, its light swallowing her whole in a cocoon of memory thread and crystal tendrils. Leah grabbed Reid's arm and pulled him into the escape path as the floor began to shake. Behind them, the deep chamber sealed itself shut. It didn't collapse. It transformed. Above. The Nexus compound crumbled into the soil, but not before a final signal burst from the deep chamber. A pulse sent across Zorathi's orbital relay towers, shooting into deep space, bouncing across known systems. A message, a pattern, a bond. 1 week later, Reid stood before a crowd of scientists, diplomats, and emissaries on Terra Prime. The holoscreens behind him showed the merged data, the neural patterns, the chamber recordings, but none of them could explain what he carried in his chest. This isn't about genetics, he said. It never was. It's about what happens when we stop trying to dominate each other's biology and start listening to each other's truths. The merge model spread within days. Other Velari stepped forward. Some outcasts, some silent, others afraid until now. But something had shifted. The precedent was set. The old ways couldn't hold. Somewhere deep in Zorathi's crust, beneath stone and silence, the deep chamber still glowed. Energy moved through it, not dead memory, but living will. It whispered in pulses, not words. Not lost, not forgotten. And Reid returned once a year. Alone, he stood above the overgrown ridge that now covered the chamber. No flowers grew there, only light, and he would close his eyes, and sometimes, just sometimes, he swore he felt her hand in his again.